hearing properly. Today we are going to be exploring the origin of cells. So, from prior knowledge, we know that cells are the smallest unit of life. All living things are made of cells, and all cells arise from pre-existing cells. But if we look at this from an evolutionary perspective, we really have to think about how we became the complex life forms that we are now, because at the very start, everything was microscopic. So let's take a look at the original starting cells. So at the start of time, all cells were prokaryotic cell structures. And this is an important keyword to note down here. There are two types that we classify cells into, prokaryotic and eukaryotic. And as we can see from here, eukaryotic cells make up most of the complex life forms that we know now. So every cell within your body, all of the plants and animals around you, those are all eukaryotic cells. And a typical example of a prokaryotic cell would be a bacterial structure. So the first cells were all prokaryotic, and they were really simple in structure as compared to these ones, but over time they evolved into the eukaryotic cells. And this is where today's theory comes into point, the endosymbiotic theory. Endosymbiosis, put simply, is just a mutually beneficial relationship within or inside of a cell. And so in this context, we're looking at a time where two prokaryotic cells interacted to form a more complex cell. So let's break this down bit by bit. Imagine we're kind of, in a space floating around, and we have two prokaryotic cells. One is, sizably different and a lot smaller, and this is a bigger prokaryotic cell. The smaller one is ingested, kind of like Pac-Man, just straight into that bigger cell, but instead of being digested, it actually was just engulfed, and it formed a double membrane here. And so their mutually beneficial relationship comes from the smaller prokaryotic cell providing an energy source in the form of ATP, cellular energy, and the bigger prokaryotic cell providing as a source of protection from the outside environment and from other cells. And what this allowed life forms to do was just evolve into forms with more complex functions that allowed them to outlast other competing cells and life forms. And so now that we've taken a look at how that comes into play, we're going to look at the evidence behind it to support this theory. So from the two organelles that we have in our eukaryotic cells, the mitochondria and the chloroplast, the first thing that we can automatically notice is that they are really similar in structure and size to the bacteria cell. So if we go back and we see that same circular capsule shape that is found, so that outlines one of our evidence points. Number two, they have double membranes. They are both double membrane structures, and if we look back into this diagram, we can see that as these smaller prokaryotic cells are being engulfed, they naturally form a double membrane surrounding there, and both of these structures have these double membranes. Here you can see that there, that's your double membrane structure. Number three, they both have 70S ribosomes, which means that they can actually synthesize their own proteins independently from the rest of the cell that they are in, which means that this provides evidence for the fact that both mitochondria and chloroplast may have been once just free living cells by their own, by themselves, before they were ingested by even bigger cells that they now have a more complex relationship with. And number four is that they do divide by binary fission. So to wrap this up, the importance of the endosymbiotic theory comes from the fact that if evolution didn't happen and the endosymbiotic theory didn't happen, we would be just stuck at these prokaryotic life forms where we only would be able to perform really basic limited interactions, whereas as these complex cells have evolved, we are able to have so many more in-depth interactions with the things and cells around us to form into these beings, life forms that we are today. So that is the relevance of the endosymbiotic theory. Yeah, that's all for today, I guess.